This is More Than Before with Nathan Cook.
Hey everybody, welcome back. I am excited for our guest today. He has started 12 business in his lifetime. He is an author on leadership, personalities, and marketing. He has built a multi-million-dollar business, but I think what's most important about him is his ability to not only connect with people, but to add value. And I know that for thousands of people, they've actually reached out to him and quietly expressed this, that he has impacted, he's changed their lives, whether that was in a small moment in time or whether that was over a long period or duration. You know, I myself was blessed by him over 10 years ago with him speaking into my life. And so I'm really excited to have him on today. Such an honor and a privilege. He is also, I have to mention, he is an amazing dad of 5 spectacular children and a poppy to nine wonderful grandchildren. Royce White, welcome to the show today. How are you doing, my brother?
Nathan, thank you. I'm doing exceptionally well, but I'm getting better. And it's a joy to see you and talk to you again. It has been 10 years, and I think back to the time we spent in Guatemala and just around the John Maxwell team, just talking and get to know each other, and just seeing where the Lord has led you, and it's just been an exciting time to look back on that.
It is quite remarkable and crazy to think that for 10 years, I mean, I've been in contact with a lot of people over this last decade, and there aren't very many people who I haven't been in pretty direct contact with, especially people who have had an impact on my life. And it's funny because I think back to those moments. I mean, I mention you in my story very often of this gentleman who comes up to me and he's talking to me, and just the impact that you had on my life. And it's funny because when I reached out to ask you to come on the show, one of the things that you said, and was shocking to me, in fact, it caught me off guard so much to the point that it brought me to tears, because you said that you think of me often and you pray for me. And there's something about that was really cut me and hit me to my core, that, man, there are people in our lives that we don't even know about, that we've maybe had one small interaction with, that are still in our corner. They're still praying for us. They're still lifting us up. And so, first of all, I have to thank you for that, because, I could use every prayer that I can get. But I am curious. Do you remember an interaction with me in kind of the lobby area when we were in Guatemala? Do you remember that interaction?
I do. What I remember is the lobby specifically. I can see it perfectly right now. I can't remember what we talked about, but I can see that interaction. It's one of the few things that I remember from Guatemala. Being there, being in the president's palace, a couple other places, but early morning. I don't know if you went with us some early morning walks, about half a dozen of us, just getting some exercise and clearing our heads, kind of things. And of course, they said, "Yeah, don't be doing that." But it was a great time, no problems. It was good. So if you remember, go ahead.
I do remember. It was after our first day of training, and it was in the evening. We had just come back from training, and I remember everyone talking about how amazing their training sessions had gone. Now, for a little bit of context, I had just gotten into the speaking world, into the coaching world. I knew nothing. I was greener than green. And, I went in thinking, I got this. Like, people have told me I'm a great speaker. I'm going to wing it. I'll be great. And I remember going in, and I remember I was slated to actually speak with 50 pastors from around the nation. And I went in, and it was abysmal. I just continued to get question after question after question, because I didn't follow what the process was. It was a very specific, laid out process. Like, it was the process for dummies, and Nathan was not following the process. And so I came back and I was listening to everyone talk about how amazing their time was, these transformational stories. And I really just got down on myself. I remember sitting in the lobby and just being really frustrated and upset with myself. And this guy comes over, didn't even know who he was. He just starts talking to me, and he asks me what's going on. And I said, well, this is kind of what happened. And he said, well, Nathan, what you need to do is you need to go back to your room and you just look at the manual and you just need to go out tomorrow and follow the manual piece by piece. Don't go off of it. Just read it if you have to. It doesn't matter. And you were so kind to see me where I was, to encourage me and to say, you know what? It's okay if you have a bad day. Just get back up and keep going. And that truly was a catalyst. I didn't know it back then, but it was a catalyst in my life to realize that, yeah, I can do this, but it takes effort. I think a lot of people don't realize that life takes effort when you're getting into it, right?
Amen to that. It's probably the biggest encourager I give, even to this day, is simply Zig Ziglar's old concept that, look, failure is an event, not a person. And all of us are going to mess up some every day. And if we can turn around, stop, think, all right, what do I have to do? Back up, and launch again with what we believed to be correct. Because the key is if we're just doing and not following a pattern, even if the pattern is wrong, we won't know whether to turn left, turn right, go up, go down, whatever it is. We'll be done. Oh, that went well. Why did it go well? That went badly. Why did it go badly? So we'll never grow from it. We'll never get a little better tomorrow, next day. We'll just always be wondering. So if we set our systems in place, okay, this is what I'm going to do, succeed or fail, this is what I'm going to do. And at the end of it, we can say, hey, I'm never going to do that again. Then we've learned that, okay, that aspect that I was going for isn't going to work here in this situation, maybe never. And so therefore I can actually put together a system for learning and growing. The key is learning to learn. My bride and I taught swing dance for a number of years. Our kids competed, and they'll teach you a single move, a simple move, something we call a kickball change, where with one foot you kick, then you put that foot down and you tap the other foot, the ball of your foot, and you change feet. All right. It sounds a little complex without seeing it, but the idea behind it is there's just three simple little moves. And so therefore we learn those moves, we teach those moves. Now for each of those, I told them to kick, I told them to do this, I told them to do that, I told them to do that, how to change weight and everything else. But at the end of it, next week when I say, do a kickball change, okay, they don't have to learn every element again. They just, oh, okay, I know what that is. And they, 1, 2, 3, they've got it. Yeah. And after years and years and years of putting things together, you will have learned how to learn, so that you're dancing for 10 years, you're learning leadership, whatever it happens to be, personality, it doesn't matter what it is, but once you've learned aspects of it, then you've learned to learn. Someone can come in and say, oh, let's talk about dominant personalities. Okay, it's not, well, what's a dominant personality? You've learned about personality. You know what dominant is. So again, you've learned to learn. In the beginning, it's going to be difficult. We're going to know nothing. Who was it? I guess it was John Maxwell who said, I don't know anything about 50,000 things. And that's the truth for all of us. There's just millions of things we don't know. I can play a mean saxophone, but there are things that I can't do, even begin to think about doing, if you will. So,
yeah, I mean, it's true. And it's interesting because when we niche down, when we focus on one thing, you become really good at one thing. It's quite amazing how many people start to think that we're experts in other things. There's kind of that there's the exchange of, oh, well, if Royce is an expert in hot sauces or barbecue sauce, then obviously he's going to be an expert in ketchup, or he's in condiments, period, it's just not the case, which, by the way, I think that's kind of a really cool accolade that I don't know a lot of people have, but you have one of the world's best barbecue sauces that are out there right now. You have so much experience in so many different areas of your life. Like, we could go in a number of different areas, but I'm really curious kind of your origin story of where did Royce come from? How did you get to a place of success in your working of all these different kind of areas that you've kind of specialized in? We were just talking about how you have your specialties, but you have some pretty eclectic specialties. What was life like growing up, and what decisions did you make to kind of get you here to this point?
Yeah, interesting question. Um, and I think just this past week, did I discover fully why, interestingly enough. So at the end, I can certainly give you the why it's I think been that way. And it's not a good thing
Hmm.
in itself, but it's a good thing in what it has produced, I think. Actually, I was born in D.C., Washington, D.C. There's very few of us that are around here that were born in Washington. I think there's like three left of us, in Virginia, but no. But and I grew up in the shadow of Washington, D.C. all my life, Virginia, Maryland, and went to school, um, graduated high school in Maryland. Went to actually studied music and a performance major, saxophone for 4 years at Towson State up in Baltimore
Hmm.
area. So I wanted to be a musician. And they say only two people know what they want from a very young age, and those are mathematicians and musicians. Uh, and so I was, I think, 8 when I wanted to be a musician, started playing
Hmm.
clarinet. Wanted to play violin, but my parents said, "No, we don't want that squeaking around the house. So here, have a clarinet," like it didn't squeak. Uh, so I grew up doing that. Um, I did lots of things throughout high school, et cetera, in music, and just following music as a path. I was a jazz musician, and wanted to play big band. That led in certainly a little later on when we got into swing dance. Certainly, my bride of um, 45, 46 years,
Wow.
and um, but I also had a minor in marketing. I loved finding out why people do what they do and applying it to how to help them, how to get them what they need. But I came out of college. I got married right away, and um, I couldn't support us at the moment. I hadn't done anything musically, so I went to work in marketing
Hmm.
and did marketing for about 13 years, and went up through the ranks to executive VP of the company, and was pretty much done there. Starting a new company um, on my own then, and building companies throughout that period. I started a magazine called Family Recreation right at the beginning of the Gulf War.
Hmm.
Uh, and basically all the marketing tests we did said, "Oh, this is going to be great. This is going to be awesome. It's a good idea." I was excited about it. The war hit. Everybody's eyes came off of fun and recreation, went straight on, the war, and totally dried up, etc. So
Hmm.
all the money we spent on the marketing test was well worth it, certainly. But so anyway, I've started. I had a music instrument business in between those. I had a uh, media manufacturing company for a number of years, 20 years or so, um, that we produced and manufactured CDs and DVDs. My dad was an entrepreneur before me, so it's in my blood. He was always at home, always building business. He wrote 50 books on electronic engineering. He was the number one engineer in his field in the world. Absolutely amazing at what he did. I learned from watching more than listening to him because I was one of those kids where he just didn't spend any time. He was always working.
Hmm.
So I had no real father figure there, and it's hurt me a lot in the years after that, just in terms of things that I would have done differently. Had I had a father that really took an interest in me and helped me grow in
Hmm.
different things. I saw he was an amazing man in creation in a lot of ways, but I saw bad leadership. I didn't know it was bad though. I saw in his company bad leadership, but I didn't know it. So in the companies I worked for before starting my own, I learned well what bad leadership was without knowing it. So here I am doing dumb things, bad things, without realizing that it wasn't the right thing to do. And then even starting my own businesses and doing the wrong thing because I was simply doing what I had learned. And then finally learning there's something wrong here. Everywhere I go, it's wrong. So it must not be everyone else. It must be me. um, so, and then about that time, as I had started to learn, as I had grown some this other business, quite large multi-million dollar business, and I was interested. I'd done an enormous amount of reading in that last business that I had, and a lot of marketing, a lot of leadership. John Maxwell, Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy. I mean, the list went on. I was literally reading 3 hours a day,
Wow.
just putting everything I could into my mind. They were my mentors. I was getting everything I could. Then joined the John Maxwell team, and I wanted to pull from the guru of the world and in leadership. And so when I went there and I met people like yourself and others that had a passion for true leadership, and that's when I went from learning about doing things to working with people and understanding that leadership and life is about people, always has been, always
Mm.
will be. And from that point on, it allowed me to turn around everything that I knew that was wrong, seeing it and starting to build my own understanding. Fortunately, I look back on all those bad things and had a great understanding of the good things, the right things, as a result of having all those bad experiences, bad ideas, bad concepts, everything that was in place. Um, Great examples for me and others to be able to share. You don't want to do this. That was pretty much within that sphere. It was a number of businesses that some failed, some succeeded. I grew and learned how to be a good entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur if I needed to be. And coming into the John Maxwell team, starting the Karis Group, which is my company that does coaching and teaching and personality training. And I started learning about personality, and it totally uh, grabbed me because I always want to know what makes someone tick.
Yeah.
What is it about you that makes you who you are? And learning personality um, is just an absolutely a fabulous thing because 99% of what happens to you in your day, all your days, is a result of your personality, like it or
Mm.
not, that it just is. And so once I learned personality, it allowed me to understand myself, where I'm wrong and where I need to change from the way I act, my behavior, for others, who they're all about. It just allowed me to really understand people extremely well, helping them much faster, much further, much deeper in their quest for understanding and being a leader. We're all leaders, either bad ones or good ones, but we're leaders. And if I can help a person become a good leader, I can train them, I can mentor them, I can coach them, and it'll take a while. If I start with personality, I can shortcut that down by probably 2/3. And
Yeah.
it's just an amazing factor. So, in the midst of all that, I had 5 kids and 9 grandkids, and maybe counting, who knows, um, and enjoy working with church leaders and with businesses and individuals, married couples, um, pretty much any type of group of people out there, if you will, um, to help them understand themselves, personality wise, to learn how to lead themselves and lead others.
Mm.
And that pretty much brings me to today. And what I had mentioned that I just learned, actually, I got it from a sermon, um, just talking about understanding who we are and what things have made the changes in us over the years. And my personality, and it was a personality thing, of course, is one that likes to bounce from
Mm.
item to item. I just love to try new things, do new things. It's very much why I started businesses. Why I go out and I was a musician. I was an editor. I was a publisher. I was an architectural and drafting designer. Um, I was a swing dance teacher. Just the list, because it never tires. It's what can I do next? Instead of just sitting, being quiet, rejoicing in God and listening for His voice instead of always listening for my voice. And for the past 67 years, that's what I've been doing, is just listening to my voice well and not listening to His voice well enough.
Yeah.
And it was a great sermon. Um, it hit me hard, but it was good. It really
Hmm.
showed me. It's going to allow me, I think, to settle down a little more finally.
I love your story. There's so many different pieces within it, and I'm actually curious. Watching your dad as an entrepreneur, watching him maybe not as affectionate, not involved in your life. How has that played a part in the raising of your kids? Because I think it's really fascinating. We live in a world right now where most parents pass their kids off to an educator, someone that's going to educate their child, and they have really no say. They have no hand within what their kids are learning right now, which is quite dangerous, because there's a lot of stuff that's going on out there that a lot of people aren't aware of what their kids are being taught. And that's not just here in the US, that's all over the globe right now. And so I think it's really interesting, though, because back when you were raising your kids, it wasn't necessarily common for a father to, be educating, right? For a father, most fathers were going off to work, coming back, and that was what they did. For you, though, you took a very specific, centered role in teaching your kids. And we're not talking just a couple of years, we're talking about from when they were in diapers to when they graduated from high school. What was that process like for you to kind of make that change from going from maybe a situation and environment when you were growing up where you didn't have that interaction and maybe that pouring in, to completely doing a 180 and saying, you know what, I'm going to have a huge role in my kids' life in terms of what I'm going to teach them and the things that they're going to learn, and they're going to know these things. What was that process like, and what was that switch for you to say, this is the kind of man I want to be?
A couple things. One is that the the real full deep credit goes to my bride, um, Jody. I mean, she did the real nuts and bolts of the day to day stuff that they needed to learn. And I did specialty elements that they wanted to learn on a couple things, etc. She was a stay at home mom, and it was on both of our hearts to not send our kids out. Um, we wanted to teach them. We were convicted that, it was our responsibility, okay, to present them to the world the best we could. Um, we um, we had, a lot of support around us. This was the early days of homeschooling, in so much as the state really hadn't agreed to it yet, and they were chasing homeschooling schoolers and even potentially putting some in jail. We
Wow.
had some friends of ours actually camp out in our basement for a week when they got wind from the lawyer that the police were coming. Um,
Wow.
so these were the early days. I couldn't envision sticking my kid on a bus and sending them away. This is my kid. I love him. I want to spend time with him.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to inculcate into him the things that I think that are important, the abilities. I want him to take those things he's weak in and get sufficient in, and I want to take those things that he has interests in and put him through the roof.
Yeah.
Okay. I have two kids that are full-time musicians. Okay. And that's hard to do when you're not able to spend the time studying, practicing music. And I have two other sons, one that works, well, the other two, I'm uh, the hot sauce slash barbecue sauce seasoning jellies business is actually my son Dustin's business. Well, he came to me 3 years ago. He said, "Dad, you know that those recipes that you make for people for birthdays and Christmas and stuff, etc. Can I take those and grow the peppers, make the sauce, bottle it, sell it?" And I said, "Sure." And I was retiring, so I'll help you do it. And I didn't need another business, so he's a farmer. So I said, "Look, I don't want a piece of the business. I just want to help you grow it, etc." And so, that's what we're doing. But he's an entrepreneur as well. He's a farmer. He grows the stuff. He makes it. He's building it. 300-400% a year growth over the past 3 years. So
Wow.
it's quite substantial in that sense. And we're looking to do the same thing, looking to get into some major retailers now with some good wins on our sauce. I need to send you a bottle because it's phenomenal. In any event, and another son is working with me in the sales realm, um, and my daughter is a fire medic. She is absolutely amazing at what she does. She's been at it for, I think, 16 years. Um, most medics don't make it that far. They usually retire earlier because it's just both a lot of work and very hard.
It's a
Um,
brutal industry.
it is, and she's now does um, a blog and a podcast, and I think writes for the largest fire magazine. I'm not remember the name of it right now in the country. Um, and she's tackling all the hard issues,
Mm.
a lot of the leadership issues aspect of that. It's she's dealing with issues like cancer within the fire service, and
Mm.
that's a hard one.
Yeah.
And she, you don't do these things, the things that she does easily in there. So they all got an opportunity to try their hand at a lot more things and know earlier what they wanted to do so they could concentrate on it.
Mm.
And that was one of the real keys about what we wanted to do. Plus, I got to enjoy my children. They were there always. Fortunately for me, I had just started one of my business, the one that lasted 20 years and really grew fast and big. And so I was at home for a couple of years during some of their most important times there. And when I wasn't, I was real close. The company was pretty close, so um, I could come up and be part of their learning within that as well. So um, it was well worth it. Um, I'd do it all again. I'd make some changes in the what we're teaching um, and in some of the things we were doing. But other than that, definitely do it again.
It's always interesting looking and talking to people from different aspects of life. Like you're on a different aspect. Like you're coming down off the mountain. You've reached some really high peaks. I feel like I'm still kind of going up the mountain. Hopefully there's a little bit more to go up. But then you have people that are like low in the valleys and they haven't even started their ascent of the mountain. And one of the things I find that's really fascinating is in the culture that we live in, we are so focused on the doing aspect, the things that we need to do in order to get to where we want to be, that we completely forget and neglect the person of understanding who they are and how to craft the world to make it accessible to them in their strengths. And I love that you say this about your kids, that you looked at your kids and you said, what are your interests? What do you like? Obviously you have to have proficiency in areas that they're going to need. We should probably know something about mathematics. Maybe you should be able to read, write. Those are kind of some important things. But one of the things I love about what you say is it's important for us to focus on the desires, the strengths that our kids have, because I don't think a lot of adults do that, right? I think a lot of adults nowadays, they look at their kids and they say, how can we get everything to be great? Oh, math isn't good, so we got to make you at least an Einstein before we can start moving on to other things. That's kind of what the culture of education is today, versus what you've described with raising your kids, which is, how can we get you proficient in the things that you need to be proficient in, but what do you love? What do you desire? How can we light a fire under you so that you'll go and burn bright and go and learn, which I think is a testament even to your kids and where they are today. You've instilled that desire, that passion, that love for things because you open their eyes to those opportunities. When you were growing up, was learning always a desire for you? Were you always curious about, aspects of the world and learning, or was that something that you later on learned? Because I know for myself, it wasn't until late after college that I even picked up another book and thought, "Oh, I could actually get something from this." Like, have you always been studious and learning and curious?
Not studious, um, curious, always curious. Um, I didn't need to cultivate um, any idea of curiousness because I was just always curious. And
Mm.
this is back in the day when, you know, you look around the neighborhood today that I live in, you never see anybody out except maybe one or two couples walking after dinner. You never see any of the kids. You never see, they're all inside playing video games.
Yeah.
So, but we, back in our day, we'd be out, we'd be exploring, we'd be 3, 5 miles away from home, and mom wouldn't be outside going, oh, where is he? It would be a
It's more
matter
like, "Hey, get out of here. I don't want to see you. It's not time to come back in the house. It's still light out."
and so we were always doing something. We could ride our bikes far. Um, so it was a matter of until I got a real deep interest in music. Then I started spending more time in my room,
Mm.
practicing woodshedding. Um, but for the most part, um, things came to me easily. I had a pretty good memory, um, so even if I didn't understand it, I had the answers.
Mm.
Okay, here's the answer because I remember it was funny in like eighth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade, somewhere in there. Earth science. I was sitting there with there were 4 people at every table. It was just like these were your lab partners, but 4 people, and we're sitting there talking, and all of a sudden the teacher said, "What was the name of the mountain that blew up and destroyed the?" And I went, "Krakatoa." And I look up there, and he's got this nasty look on his face. He comes marching over, and he says, "Where's your paper?" I said, "What paper?" He said, "This is a quiz." So we'd been talking amongst ourselves, and we didn't know that he had said taking a quiz because we weren't paying attention. Um, and but so he wrote my name on it, and he said, "Now everybody else gets this right because you told him the answer, and you get it wrong." Mr. Jones, I love Mr. Jones. He's a good guy. But it was easy for me. I had a real good memory. I could remember anything. Got me in a lot of trouble because I didn't do as much studying. But
Mm.
I'd come in. I had it my senior year, and this isn't anything of my doing. I mean, I was just blessed with it. Of course, most of it's gone now. But my 12th grade English teacher was furious with me all the time, sort of, because I'd skip class all the time, but I'd come in and ace the tests.
Mm.
And my sister hated that because she studied profusely. I mean, 5 hours a night. She was so faithful in what she did. And she got good grades, probably better than me. Um, but she worked hard at it. She really worked hard. And it shows today in a lot of the things that she does.
Mm.
But it came to me. So no, I wasn't studious pretty much till after I did what I needed to in college. When I got into work, I wanted to know how things worked. That's always my interest. So I started reading, and that's where I found, oh, here are the answers in these books. So I'd just get a subject and read. I became a publisher actually of an electronics journal um, because I had created it actually, and there's just an enormous amount I learned about the whole publishing trade and what
Mm.
goes on there, and um, book a lot about authoring and writing books, just in every aspect of it. I went through this company and learned an enormous amount that I'd later use when I became an author. There's just a lot that I learned from that. So most of it came after school. I'd gotten the things in school that I needed. That sufficiency
Hmm.
in reading, writing, and arithmetic, um, sufficiency in the skills that I generally needed to exist. Okay, and then the things that I wanted to do, I poured my heart into. Well, I just we moved that up earlier in one sense in our kids so that they started when they were young and
Mm.
not didn't have to wait. So when they got, so they're standing on my shoulders.
Mm.
They can grow from because they learned all these things a lot earlier, a lot sooner, and the things that they wanted to learn and needed to learn for what they needed to do to succeed. Um, and I've coached, mentored um, most of my kids um, in the past 10 years as they
Mm.
wanted to do more, be more, and knew, well, Dad's got the answers here, being a coach. And what some of them would do would bring a friend in, and I did it with one of them for like 2.5, 3 years. We were just constantly going through different um, books and going through different mentorship lessons and coaching them through things, teaching them how to be a good coach themselves in their lives, um, so that my kids have learned how to lead themselves. Not fully. They're still, got things that they need to learn, and some of them, one of them, um, I, hasn't come to me yet. So I'm thinking, well, one day when they want to, accomplish, if not, I don't care who it is, as long as they get with someone, Nathan, can you coach? My dad said you were good. Can you coach me? It would be good to have somebody. I can pretty much, especially knowing personality, and this isn't credit to me, it's just knowing the formula. I can coach someone into success, almost anyone, almost into any success that they want. Doubly task oriented personalities get to it faster.
Hmm.
Doubly people oriented personalities get to it slower unless the thing they want to accomplish is people oriented in that sense. But doubly outgoing people get sidetracked. When I say doubly outgoing, dominant personalities are outgoing and task oriented. Uh, Inspiring personalities are outgoing and people oriented, but sometimes you get people with those two personalities, dominant and inspiring. Those are both outgoing, so they're doubly outgoing.
Mm.
And so if they're doubly outgoing, they get distracted, especially the eyes, the inspiring types. They'll get distracted and it'll take them longer. The reserve types, they can focus. The outgoing types can't. The actually level 5 leaders are doubly reserved.
Yeah.
And you'll find this in not in so many words, but what I saw in reading it in Jim Collins' Good to Great. Um, he talks about taking the studies that they did, um, and they wanted to find out what companies did in order to become really great. They took those that were 3 times the market average at that point, and they had 15 of them, and they determined it was the leader. He didn't want it to be the leader, and he said it can't be the leader, therefore don't study that. And at the end of the book, in the book, he says, but then my team came to me and said, hey, you said we could ask any questions. Well, this question is, why are we not doing the very thing that we think it is? And he said, okay, and he let him do it, and they found out indeed that was it. But within the book, he says the level 5 leaders he found were um, resolved and humble. That's what a level 5 leader has in them. And the resolved, okay, is your conscientious personality, uh, reserved and task oriented. And that's the resolved side. And the humble side is your reserved and people oriented. You put those together and you've got a level 5 leader.
Mm.
or the making of one anyway, a lot easier because they come by it naturally, if you will. So I disagree with the many who say that, the natural born leader is the dominant. Just between you and me, the dominant has a tendency to screw the things up the most. Um,
Yeah.
they're going there 100 miles an hour, but they're not people oriented. And as a result of not being people oriented, they have a tendency to break it all down, lose it all. And I speak as one who has 97% dominant in me. I'm not a dominant as my primary. My inspiring is my primary at 100%. So, but I understand them extremely well. And when I go in to help people from a personality perspective learn leadership and be great leaders and succeed, you can do it. I can do it. Anybody can do it if they understand it well enough to coach someone
Mm-hmm.
through to that success.
Yeah.
So it's a formula with a lot of caveats to it.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that personality really does play a huge part in our lives because it is a behavioral characteristic of us, right? Like we're showing up and we show up in a very specific way. And if you understand, the code, if you understand the blueprint of a person of how they may respond in a situation, how they may respond to the way that you speak with them, or how they listen or how they learn, and all these different aspects of a person's personality, it's quite interesting because we can start to encourage the people around us to maybe live life in a different way than maybe they're going, because maybe they're trying to use their dominant traits. I think this was something that we both learned actually in the same training is um, people tend to rely so heavily on their strengths, and they put their strengths out there so boldly that they actually become weaknesses in their life because they overutilize them and they push them too much. In your life, I'm curious, like what have been some of those strengths that you've had that you've maybe pushed out there too much that you've had to learn of, like, okay, I have to actually pull myself back a little bit, because I know for myself, I'm a very outgoing person. For me, I'm high I, I'm high D. I used to have S, but I stopped carrying, so now I'm just an ID. Small joke for you guys listening. but what's interesting though is if I'm not careful, I can come off as someone uh lackadaisical. I'm all over the place, like distracted, or I come across as someone domineering, too pushy. Even with like just directing people, I just if I see a problem, I'm like, you go here, you go there, you do this, right? And it's very natural for me to do that. But if I'm not careful for myself, I can overplay that hand and it can become too much for people and they see that as a weakness. I'm curious for you, what has been one of those dominant traits in your life that maybe you thought that was a strength, because it is, but it was a strength, but then you started to realize, man, I need to dial this back, because it is important for us to be able to be in control. I was talking to someone about meekness recently. Of meekness is not weakness. Meekness is strength under control.
Mm.
What is one of those strengths that you've had to learn to stay under control that really sets you apart as who you were created to be?
Thinking something is confidence when it's really arrogance, and treating people from an arrogant position. And um, another is making people pay. One of the things that dominants do, I actually had a really good friend of mine once, 40 years ago. We were sitting at lunch or something, and something happened. And he said, Royce, you really like to make people pay. It was somewhat teasing and somewhat what I was doing, somewhat serious and hurtful. And certainly from my point of view, I was giving myself the benefit of the doubt. But that has
There's
stuck
always a
with
little bit
me.
of truth when people say that too, right? It's like, oh, I'm just joking, I'm playing around, and you're like,
Truth is
are you?
here. What I think is here. Um, and but it stuck with me, all these years. And it stuck with me because I'd see it happen, and I go, "Oh my gosh, I'm making him pay." And
Mm,
then I had to really work. even in things that didn't really matter. It's like being so competitive. Okay, it's a high dominant aspect. Look at it in one of the, in politicians. They don't, in leaders that are high dominant will make you pay, and you'll feel it. And I've uh, coached, group coached, and consulted and worked with teams. And what I love about being dominant, and I think this is why God has raised me up to do this, is having such a high dominant aspect, um, is that I can go into a team that has a very high dominant leader. And although they're only 12% of the population, they have a tendency to be 55% of leadership
Mm.
because they're very pompous, know where they're going, very assured. I'm going to accomplish. I'm going to take this team. We're going to make it happen. And as a result, people see that and say, "Oh, I want that. I want that for our pastor."
Mm.
You don't. I want that for our leader at this company. So the whole point being, again, those level 5 leaders aren't the guys up here. Not that they can't learn. All right, not that they won't become level 5 leaders, but it's going to take some serious learning. And the real hard part for the dominance is that you can hit them with the 4x4 over and over and over again, and it'll take them 20 to 40 years to finally go, "Did you hit me?"
Yeah.
They're just, it's an enormous amount of learning that has to go on. And unless there's a significant emotional event in their life or the Holy Spirit, that it's really hard to change.
Yeah.
Not that they won't, but it's really, really hard. And I've worked with a number of them to see the truth in that, including, my dad for all the years until he even died. Um, um, and he finally made a change actually at 83. But
Wow.
that was based on the second part of what I said, the Holy Spirit. Um, and so being a dominant, there's just so many things I look back on, and I still see in my tendencies. It's going, no, I don't want to go that direction. Why am I doing that? Why am I saying it? Why am I thinking that? And I have to back off, and I just have to. It takes me an hour to 24 hours to think about things sometimes, uh, to come back to reality because I'm so
Mm.
upset about it, um, and dealing with it and really coming to an understanding of what that is. So many things I've worked through, but there's so many things that I'm still working through on those things. The great thing is I have the knowledge now and I have the experience with it to see it much faster instead of, going 10 years and finally, running into someone that I had hurt 10 years ago and realizing, wow, yeah, that was me. And
Mm.
how do I keep those in control, dominant aspects and to use to be successful? And how do I put those out of control aspects to death so that I don't hurt others and hurt myself with carelessness in what I say and what I do?
Mm.
Those are probably the biggest things, and they're probably, I don't know, 200 or 300 more, but those are the
Just a couple more.
those are the big things.
But I love what you say about that because it is true that we lean into those strengths and we almost kind of epitomize certain people to be in those positions, not realizing that like even at the leader, the dominant leader, the one that we say, oh, that should be the one leading everyone. Like you think about like a shepherd, like you don't want the shepherd beating the sheep. Like it doesn't really work that way. You have to gently carouse them. Oh, come over here, now there is a time when the shepherd, gets the crook and goes after
Gets
him.
his staff, yeah.
Yeah, but there is something to be said about understanding how your strengths can play out in your life and how that can really help you. And I love that about really your life. I think you've capitalized on a lot of the strengths that you've had. I think that natural curiosity that you have, there's the dominant style within you that really comes out strong to be able to see where you want to go and where other people want to go and start leading them in that direction. There's so many great things that I think everyone today listening could really even dive in more with you, especially with personalities and those kinds of things. I absolutely love spending this time with you, because I know I've learned a lot. I know everyone listening has learned and gleaned a lot from your wisdom, because you truly are a wise man. You're not just a knowledgeable man, you're a wise man. You take information and you apply it through a filter that other people can really start to use in their life. So I really love that you came on, you really just downloaded into all of us. So I want to thank you for that. Royce, I do have another question here before we kind of end. With all of your years of experience, you've been in different industries, you've studied different subjects over the years, you've traveled around the world, you've experienced life. I mean, really to the fullest. You really have lived a full life. I'm curious, what is the greatest thing that you have learned that would serve people that are listening today, right now, who are looking to identify who they are, how they could show up more in their life, of more of who they were created to be, more of this identity that needs to be lived out, rather than maybe some of the identities that people are putting on them. What would you say to someone? What is one of the greatest lessons that you've learned that would encourage anyone listening today?
I call it the physics of God. Physics are truths, okay? Gravity, you know. In order to overcome gravity, we got to do a lot. You got to have wings, you got to have thrust, just really way out in order to overcome gravity. You can do it, but it's taken a long time to get there. In the same sense, if the things that God says are true, and I find all of decent leadership elements throughout the Proverbs, you just amazing things throughout there. Those are the physics of God. Okay, you do what is true, and it works. Again, that reading 1 hour a day, okay, 365 hours in a year. Okay, it takes what, 6 to 8 hours to read a book today, and they're gotten smaller, I've noticed. Um, but if it takes 10 hours to make math simple, that's 36.5 books. That's a bunch of reading for one
Yeah.
hour a day. That's a physics element that proves itself true at the end of that time. And it proves itself true at the end of each of the books too, because you've learned at least that element. So um, it's understanding the way things work, the truth of it. You follow a path that's wrong, and it'll have a bad outcome. Okay, you surround yourself with people that are um, bad counselors, you get bad information,
Mm.
and your outcome is bad. The key is to understand what truth really is. Search it out, find out what really truth. If what I'm saying is true, do it. If it's not true, find out what is true and do it. That's the key. And I don't mean your truth and my truth. There is a truth, and it's important to know that. So it's really to understand what the physics of God are, what the truth of good leadership is, what your personality is, who you are, who God's made you to be. And therefore, once you know, oh, I see, I can't tell you how many times I've said, wow, that's why I'm that way, because that's my personality. It's the way I was formed, basically, the things I picked up from all the different things around me, et cetera. That's who I am from a
Mm.
personality point of view. And that's not going to change so much. My desires aren't going to change so much in that. Um, and I need to understand the weaknesses and make them strong. And I need to keep the strengths not too strong, as you mentioned. Um, and I need to do the things that I need to do to accomplish what it is that I want. And I need to have a coach.
Yeah.
Everyone needs a coach to help them with the tough things, to show them when I don't have eyes to see, I need someone else's eyes to see for me,
Mm.
and ask the right questions and get me to thinking and lead me into a good way.
I love that you say the coach aspect, because I think most people still don't understand kind of what a coach is. I think
Mm,
they have that stereotypical understanding of what a coach is. It's the football coach, it's the, cheerleading coach or whatever it is. They're going to tell me exactly what I need to do. And it's interesting, because as I've grown as a coach, I started with the understanding of like, oh, the coach is going to tell you what to do and you just do it.
mm,
And then after going through certification and training and starting to understand, oh, well, coaching actually is about trying to help the person actually think through their problems, not give them the answers, but help them to discover those answers for themselves.
Discover.
And then at a certain point, I started to become coach and mentor. And I started to say, there are some things here that I can illuminate some learning that will help you in navigating this portion of your life. You don't have to take it, but I want you to think about this. And it gives a little bit of a deeper knowledge and understanding. I almost like to say it's wisdom coming in. And I say, hey, I want you to think about this. Think about this in your life. And I love that you say, find a coach, because it is true. You could start with any coach to get started, but make sure you find a coach that's going to cause you to think. Not only cause you to think, but cause you to change the way that you're showing up in your life. Because I think we all need someone like that in our life. And I have been so fortunate and lucky to have coaches all around me for the last 10 years. I mean, Royce, you were a coach in my life, whether you know it or not, but that moment sitting in Guatemala in the lobby, you were a coach that saw something in me. You spoke into me. You helped me to become more aware of how I can change and move forward. And because of that interaction, I went back out the next day. I went back out the next day after that. And I continued to hone my skill. I wasn't great, but I got better. And that's one of the great things about us as coaches. We understand that everyone that we work with can become better. We see them in their fullest potential of what they could be. And we say, hey, what if? Tell us what would happen if you were to take these steps. And that's what I love about being surrounded by coaches. If you're listening right now, go find a coach, whoever it is. Go look up Royce. You can look up my website. You can look up the number of people that have been on the show so far. There's a few coaches that have been on that. No matter who you pick, they're going to see things inside of you and draw those to the surface, so that you can actually start to live your life in a way that is in alignment with God. My brother, I love you so much. I thank you so much for being on the show, for sharing your life, sharing your journey, sharing your wisdom. There's so much. I hope you guys go back, listen to this over and over again. Make sure you share, like, and subscribe to the podcast. And to all of you listening, I want you to remember to be more, see more, and experience more than before.